Hello and welcome back to the show, World War II Books Where to Start. I'm your host, Henry Hap Arnold, General Officer of the United States Air Force, and today I'd like to give you a briefing on a little secret mission that could change the course of the war. That's right, the Doolittle raid. We're going to bomb Tokyo. It's going to change everything. And in fact, it did. It really did change the course of the war. Kind of a rare instance where one little action can really alter the whole strategic course of a conflict. So first, the stuff I haven't read, but for completion's sake, let's present the Doolittle Raid by Carol Glines. This is from '88, and it's 225 pages. Don't know anything about it. And The First Heroes by Craig Nelson. Can't get this stuff straight today. That is from '02, 372 pages. And then the co-pilot of Jimmy Doolittle's plane, Dick Cole's War by Dennis Okerstrom. And that is from 2015, 281 pages. This one I'm kind of interested in for his after Tokyo raid stuff, as much as anything else. Dick Cole just passed away in 2019 at 103 years old. And as long as he could, up until I think maybe 2018, he was attending the annual ceremony at Dayton's Air Force Base with the B-25 fly-in. Every April they commemorated the Doolittle raid there. And if you ever get to the museum there, the Air Force Museum in Dayton, they have a replica of the little silver cups and the bottle of cognac that they had agreed to share. The last survivor was supposed to open it by himself and toast the rest of the crew. What they actually did in 2012 or so, the last 5 members that could still travel from the Doolittle raid actually broke the bottle open and had a snort. Pretty cool. The actual bottle and cask and the little silver cups, chalices, whatever we're going to call them, I think is in Annapolis's Naval Academy. But the replica is there at Dayton's. It's still pretty cool to see. So there's that. And then we're going to cover some stuff I have read. And this is the classic here. No dust jacket on this. This is a wartime edition, 1943 or 44, published. It's by 30 Seconds Over Tokyo by Captain Ted Lawson, who was the pilot of the Ruptured Duck, plane number 7. And what I kind of like about this is the inset cover art there for the front cover of the raid, and then the road home. And I like that the fact they've got a cargo plane there on the back cover, and the B-25 and the Hornet there in the inset in the front cover. Pretty cool stuff. This was cobbled together over a couple nights with a co-author, Considine, I think his name was, and published with the grace of the War Department in '43, and broke the story to the public exactly what the Doolittle raid was. At the time, of course, FDR was kind of shy about it and said they came from Shangri-La, in that famous story. And it's because he didn't want to reveal the name of the aircraft carrier or the fact that it was, in fact, launched from a carrier, although the Japanese suspected and were 99% sure it had to have come from a carrier, but always denying the enemy a little bit of information was considered, the top secret stuff back then. But this kind of broke it open to the American public, exactly what happened. And of course, Ted Lawson's crew was typical. They ran out of gas because the launching point was 200 miles further out than expected due to the Japanese pickup boats that morning. And it was supposed to originally be a night raid. They had actually had to fly in daytime conditions. So they ran out of gas as it's getting dark over the Chinese coast, and he tries to put it down on a beach. I can't remember whether it was wheels up or wheels down, but it didn't go well. He got ejected through the front window and smashed his legs up pretty bad. Eventually, one of his legs had to be amputated in China, and that could not have been too pleasant, trusting the state of medicine there, and no antibiotics at the time, of course, and probably not any penicillin, and painkillers, pretty sketchy. So that had to be really awful. He was being lugged around China by Chinese civilians and his crew in excruciating pain while his leg deteriorates and the gangrene sets in. That had to be excruciating. Not knowing if you could get out, if you're going to die of the gangrene, what your fate was going to be. That had to be a really tough mental gig to go through. Village after village. He talks about being greeted by smiling civilians, villagers there, and given the bowl of rice and having to listen to their phonograph records, which he said was awful. They thought it was great to have their music, to present to the Americans. And he said it's 3 notes repeated over and over, and it was really grated on his nerve. He was not a fan of it. So I remember that pretty clearly. from the book. This is one of the books that got me started in World War II. This was in my childhood school's library, along with Sink to Bismarck. And I read them both several times. It's really hooked me into the idea of World War II. Really got me going. So I can't recommend this one enough. This is essential, the essential piece for the Doolittle raid. Still in print, various. You can probably find in deluxe editions now. And then we have Target Tokyo by James M. Scott. This is from 2015. It's a whopper, 483 pages, extensive photo section. And James M. Scott is a bit problematic for me. His Rampage, the story of the liberation of Manila, I barely got through. I had to fight and claw and scratch to do it. The writing is just really, really bad at many points. It rarely lifts itself off the ground to go anywhere. And I had to go back and read Target Tokyo again to make sure that I really did enjoy it the first time. And I did, but it's kind of problematic. He's not a great storyteller. He's not a great overall writer. Put those two together, and what do you get? Better than it should be, I guess. And maybe because the extensive amount of stuff he covers, specifically like the retribution against Chinese civilians to the tune of about 20,000 killed by the Japanese as they went on their own little retributive raid for harboring American men in uniform. They did not appreciate our little raid over Tokyo. They had kind of like Goering in Germany famously declaring that if a single enemy plane flies over Germany, you can call me Meyer. The Japanese had the same kind of perspective. No one would dare to raid the Japanese islands. First of all, how inconceivable. And second, if you tried, we'll shoot you down. It's never going to happen. And then it did, pretty promptly, and with a great amount of egg on their face, they had to go get some revenge on somebody for something. So the Chinese had to suffer for it. Chiang Kai-shek had not wanted this mission to go ahead in the first place because he knew what was going to happen to the civilians. If regardless of the success or failure of the raid, he knew that his people would have to eat it. And so he tried to put the Americans off as much as he could. He reluctantly built an airfield, or a couple airfields, with, by hard manual labor. He did not want to go through this, and we just kind of strong armed him and said, yeah, it's going to happen, and keep your mouth shut. We told him as little as we could because of our fears of security leaks in the Chinese military hierarchy and political hierarchy getting to the Japanese and dooming the raid from the outset. So we gave them as little as information as possible to make this happen. And in the end, the best laid plans were all kind of ruined. Not a single aircraft landed on a Chinese airfield. They all crashed. 15 of them crashed. Some in South China Sea, some inland in China, some right on the coast, like Ruptured Duck came down on the coast. And then I think it's plane number 15 actually diverted to the Soviet Union because of the fears of their gasoline situation, which they had been strictly ordered not to do. Don't go to the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union is neutral with Japan, and we don't want to cause any problems. And we can't get you out if you do. But crew number 15 made the decision to go ahead and do it anyway because of fuel. They didn't think they could even make the coast of China. So their choice was to go to the Soviet Union, and thereupon followed a long odyssey of typical Soviet paranoia, keeping these guys confined in internment, telling them nothing of the outside world, feeding them what they had to, barely keeping them alive through the winter, and to the point where finally I think it was maybe the pilot of the plane said, I'm going to write a letter to Stalin. I'll show you. Something's got to get done. You're not giving our letters to our consul or our ambassador. This is bullshit. We've got to get out of here. And that opened the doors, like open sesame, light shining down from heaven. You write a letter to Stalin and shit happens. But they had to be clandestine about it. They couldn't just tell the Japanese, oh yeah, we popped them out of internment, sorry. So they had this fake escape, as I recall it, a fake escape across the breadth and width of the Soviet Union. I think they eventually got out through the Black Sea and home that way. Crazy stuff. It's worth a read just for that section alone, really. But then the other thing about the Tokyo raid, which he covers, and it had an outsized effect on the war. It really did. This ended the debate within the IJN about whether they go ahead with phase 2 of the southern resource area and grabbing further islands in the South Pacific, or do we attack Midway and draw out the American fleet. This ended the debate, And Yamamoto said, hey, you do this now, like I told you to, or I resign. And the IJN, they caved. So that has a tremendous effect, an overreaction on the part of the Japanese military hierarchy for the embarrassment of having their emperor threatened in his own palace in Tokyo. It's really a crucial turning point. You know, people talk about the Midway being the turning point of the Pacific War. I always say the Solomon Islands campaign was actually more important. But if you want to talk about turning points, just the decision point to react to the Doolittle raid in this way was really maybe the most important aspect. So then, what else do we have? Oh, we have a couple movies. 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, same name as the book, put out in 1944, starring Spencer Tracy, and this is a War Department, propaganda film of the time. It was really successful, and for being 44, it holds up pretty well with a bit of the hokey acting and cobbling the script together so quick. Movies were shot really fast back then. If you went on 6 weeks on a shoot, that was an epic. Mostly, like Casablanca, I think was shot in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, something like that, and that was kind of long considering what it was. But 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, they used the real B-25s and they had access to a real aircraft carrier. That's priceless stuff that you can't do today for genuine effect, and it's well worth the watch. And then there's the dreadful Pearl Harbor from 2000-ish with Ben Affleck and some other dude and Kate Beckinsale. The only reason I mention that is that they can't have the doom and gloom of Pearl Harbor, which is military defeat, in Hollywood these days. They're not going to remake Tora. So in order to avoid that stigma, they tack on the Doolittle raid at the end to have a happy ending, complete with Affleck and his other dude suddenly becoming Doolittle Raiders. Even though they were fighter pilots in the movie, they suddenly become bomber pilots. And off they go into Wild Blue Yonder with a really awful slow motion shot of Doolittle and the 80 airmen walking out of the hangar just for flag waving nonsense. It's really bad. I don't recommend it. Avoid it at all costs. Stick with 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. Much better film. That'll do it for today. Hope you found one of these books that you would enjoy to read. The three I mentioned at the start, I don't know if they're all in print or not. I would suspect at least two out of the two recent ones are still in print, and the others I have read are in print. So I hope you found something there you'd like to read or watch. Come back next time, we'll do another topic, and until next time, happy reading.